You think you know who you are. You think that knowing who you are protects you. You call it being grounded, being authentic, being realistic. You believe your self-concept is a stable truth that keeps you safe from delusion and distraction. That belief feels mature. It feels intelligent. It is also the quiet reason your future keeps looking suspiciously similar to your past. Here is the problem. The thing you call your identity is not a fact. It is a running model built by a brain that values metabolic efficiency, social survival, and short-term prediction. It reduces uncertainty by preferring what has been true over what could become true. It makes you consistent, even when consistency is costly. And once that model sets, you begin to defend it as if your life depends on it. In a primitive sense, it does. Your nervous system tags identity threats as survival threats. So you will fight to stay the same, while telling yourself you are fighting to be honest. You do not hold a self-concept. Your self-concept holds you. That is the tension you can feel, but avoid naming. Change is not blocked by ability. It is blocked by a private loyalty to an old description of yourself that felt safe once and now functions like a locked door. The lock is cognitive, not physical. It sits in your predictions about what actions are for people like you, and what actions are not. Psychology has mapped this pattern for decades. Leon Festinger called it cognitive dissonance. The mind reduces the discomfort of mismatch between belief and behavior by editing either one. William Swan documented self-verification, the tendency to seek confirmation of your existing self-views, even negative ones, because verified misery feels safer than unverified possibility. Identity protective cognition shows up in politics, in money, in relationships. People reject accurate data when it threatens the story that keeps their social world coherent. This is not a character flaw. It is an algorithm. It runs quietly while you argue for your preferences, as if they are principles. You say you are bad with money, so your attention filters for evidence that you are bad with money. You say you are an introvert, so you opt out of arenas that would make that label expensive. You say you are loyal, so you stay in dead arrangements to avoid the pain of contradicting the story. Each decision feels rational in isolation. The pattern is only clear when you notice that every choice protects your description of yourself first and your future second. This is how sabotage hides. It does not look like drama. It looks like alignment with your identity. You default to familiar skills. You reject roles that would force you to be visibly new at something. You minimize contact with people who would not accept your usual defense. Then you label this avoidance as boundaries or taste or realism. Meanwhile, time passes. Options collapse. You wake up with a past that proves you right and a future that proves you are stuck. The brain is very efficient at this. Predictive processing theory describes how it constantly forecasts what will happen next and then updates or resists based on error costs. A stable identity lowers error costs. It narrows your possible actions to a thin band where surprises are few. The default mode network stitches your memories into a story that makes sense. It does not ask if the story is helpful. It asks if the story holds together. That is why it will protect a self-concept that hurts you. Coherence first. Utility later, if ever. You can see the implications. Every identity behaves like a filter on opportunity. Not philosophical, practical. If you carry the identity of the reliable helper, you will say yes when a strategic no would open room for leverage. If you carry the identity of the independent outsider, you will refuse alliances that would compound your results. If you carry the identity of the misunderstood genius, you will resent feedback that could make your work usable. These are not random mistakes. They are consistent outputs of the identity you are proud of. The culture taught you to worship authenticity. That sounds noble. Epictetus never once praised identity for its own sake. He praised control of attention, restraint, and action in accord with reason. Marcus Aurelius did not write about defending a personal brand. He wrote about escaping the fog of impressions and doing what the present task requires. Authenticity, as sold to you, tells you to keep being what you have been. Stoicism instructs you to become the person the situation demands, without flinching. There is a hard difference. History respects those who treated identity as a tool instead of a cage. Machiavelli understood that appearance and role are instruments. He did not confuse stability of essence with consistency of behavior. Nietzsche described becoming, not as theater, but as disciplined self-overcoming. Sartre warned about bad faith, the act of pretending you are only the role you once chose, even when it shrinks you. These are not slogans. They are descriptions of how to maintain agency in a moving world. Social identity intensifies the trap. You join a group to belong, then the group gives you a script. You outsource parts of your self-concept to the tribe because it simplifies choice and buys you safety. Then you edit your perception to avoid sanctions. If the group defines you as the practical one, you silence your ambition. If the group defines you as the ambitious one, you hide your uncertainty. The algorithmic platforms you live on amplify this by rewarding predictable signals. You begin to perform the version of yourself that earns approval. Then you confuse the performance with reality. You do it long enough, and you cannot tell the difference. Loss aversion keeps this arrangement in place. Kahneman measured how losses feel heavier than equivalent gains. Identity loss feels like the heaviest loss of all. So you will trade actual opportunity for the comfort of being the kind of person who would not take that risk. You will avoid new domains because beginner status triggers social pain. The anterior cingulate cortex flags that conflict. The amygdala tags it with threat. The prefrontal cortex finds a story that explains the avoidance. You call it values. You call it balance. The circuitry calls it relief. Here's the part you resist. Every time you protect your identity, you pay with your future. The cost is not loud. It accrues quietly as compounding paths not taken. You cannot see the alternate skill you would have built if you tolerated being a novice for 90 days. You cannot see the ally you would have met if you entered the room where you felt outclassed. You cannot see the respect you would have earned if you let your results contradict your story. You only see the relief you got by staying the same. The bill comes due later. It always does. People will encourage you to wait for clarity. That is comforting. It is also how identity keeps command. Clarity often follows action, not the other way around. The basal ganglia stores repeated actions as policies. The brain updates confidence after evidence, not before. If your self-concept requires proof before movement, you have designed a loop that never opens. You defend this as caution and wisdom. It is fear of internal contradiction. It is refusing the temporary embarrassment required to become someone who can do what you say you want. You may tell yourself you cannot violate your nature. That line sounds deep. It is a convenient shield. Human nature contains more range than your current character uses. Neuroscience calls it plasticity. Philosophy calls it agency. Law calls it responsibility. What you call nature is usually habit. What you call preference is often conditioning that felt safe when you were young enough to need it. You needed it then. You do not need it now. Your environment has changed. Your nervous system does not update by default. You have to force the update by contradicting yourself in public. That sentence makes most people recoil. Good. The recoil is the location of the exit. You want to preserve social face while changing substance. That is the fantasy. It is possible in rare cases. Usually you pay for growth with a period of being misunderstood. The world anchors you to your old description because it is easier for them. People prefer you consistent because it reduces their prediction error. They will tell you to be true to yourself. What they often mean is be predictable for me. If you cannot tolerate that tension, you are already owned. There is a way through that does not depend on theatrics. It requires you to look at identity as a functional model, not a sacred object. Instead of asking, "Is this me?" you begin to ask, "Does this choice produce the long-term outcome I actually respect?" You accept that your internal narrative will lag behind your new actions. You act, then you update the label later. Carl Friston's work on active inference points to this. Agents minimize surprise by acting to confirm their model or by changing the model to fit better evidence. Most people only do the first. You do the second, not by affirmations, by visible outputs that the brain cannot ignore. You will feel like a liar during the transition. That feeling comes from mixing up honesty with consistency. Honesty is not repeating your old description at every turn. Honesty is stating your intention and then aligning your behavior with it even when the old identity protests. Consistency is useful when it serves a principle. It is prison when it serves your fear of being seen failing in a new domain. You might worry about reputation. Smart. Reputation is not identity. It is a market perception you can shape by making and keeping specific commitments. If you change your commitments, you accept that some observers will call you inconsistent. In the long run, observers who value results will update. Observers who only value stability will not. You do not build your life on their evaluations unless you want their lives. Some people think this posture leads to cold manipulation. They misunderstand. Treating identity as a tool does not mean discarding ethics. It means refusing to worship a static story about yourself. Marcus Aurelius stayed within his principles while adjusting his actions to the reality in front of him. He did not ask, "Is a Stoic emperor supposed to do this?" He asked, "What is the just act in this situation?" Then he did it. Principles set the direction. Identity should not set the ceiling. There is a deeper pressure here. In volatile environments, identity rigidity is a liability. When conditions shift, those who can reassign themselves roles move faster. They learn publicly. They are willing to be seen at version 1 because they care more about becoming effective than about looking consistent. They compound skill faster. They access networks outside their old circle. They catch opportunities early because their model allows for them. Meanwhile, rigid identity types wait for conditions that match their story. They call the flexible ones lucky. Then they age into bitterness, still consistent, still stuck. There is a social cost to being unpredictable in service of a purpose. Some will resent you for not playing the part they wrote for you. Others will try to shame you back into your old lane. This is predictable. Machiavelli advised princes to accept being judged inconsistent if consistency would lead to ruin. You are not a prince. You are the only sovereign of your own choices. If you let the court of opinion fix your identity for you, do not pretend you lacked a crown. You handed it away. You will hear that self-acceptance is the answer. True, with precision. Accepting your past is required to stop hiding from it. Accepting your present is useful to see clearly without denial. But accepting your self-concept as fixed is self-sabotage dressed as peace. Epictetus instructed students to separate what is up to us from what is not. Your past is not up to you now. Your next choice is. Your label is not fate. Your attention and action are. There is also a biological trap that matters. The brain rewards identity coherence with relief. Relief feels like truth. It is not truth. It is the absence of alarm. If you chase relief, you will keep choosing what keeps your narrative stable. If you want progress, you will tolerate the alarm long enough for the system to reset its baseline. You will stop reading gut fear as a signal that the choice is wrong. Sometimes it is a signal that the choice is new. Your self-concept whispers rules about what people like you do. Listen carefully. Those rules are usually old bargains you made with earlier versions of yourself or with people whose approval you needed. You do not need their approval at the price of your potential. You need your own respect. Respect comes from acting in ways that are hard now and obvious later. It does not come from protecting an image curated more carefully than your outcomes. There are identities that still serve you. Keep them. but test them. Hold them on probation. Notice when an identity you cherish is used to avoid growth. If the phrase "I am the kind of person" appears in your head, right before you decline a path that would stretch you, flag it. That phrase is the soft alarm of sabotage. It sounds reasonable. It is rationalization. You can be the kind of person who builds a different kind of future. That requires moving first, then letting the label adjust. You do not need to announce this shift. Broadcasting identity experiments invites other people to regulate you back to the mean. You can earn the right to a new label by living it long enough that even your own brain cannot deny the evidence. Results change faster than reputations. Reputation changes faster than public narrative. Public narrative changes last. Most people invert that order. They talk first. They curate second. They consider action only when cornered. That is why they stay small while sounding insightful. Choose the opposite sequence, and the labels will manage themselves. This is not for everyone. Most people are exhausted and overexposed. Their attention has been fragmented by feeds that reward signaling over substance. They will prefer the light buzz of identity affirmation to the hard burn of identity revision. They will call you selfish for prioritizing what matters. They will call you fake for refusing to play a role they like. They will project their discomfort onto you and feel vindicated when you flinch. They will keep each other consistent. The masses always do. That is why the median outcome is so easy to predict. If you have listened this far, you already know which side you are on. You feel the friction between who you have been and who your future requires. You also feel the cost of waiting for permission. Waiting has not been harmless. It has calcified the exact model that is draining your options. The moment you admit that, your leverage appears. You can stop performing at the level of label. You can start acting at the level of outcome. You can outgrow the need to be recognized as the person who did it by growing into the person who can do it. The world does not reward identity purity. It rewards utility, reliability, and results aligned with value. You are not required to be the same person you were when you built a self-concept that helped you survive a different set of constraints. You are required to carry responsibility for the consequences of your choices. That is the adult bargain. It is harder than projecting your identity onto the world. It is also the only path that does not end in quiet desperation. Most people will reject this. Some will pretend to agree and then go right back to defending the same tired labels. A few will feel exposed and still move. They will test the edges of their identity in real settings. They will absorb the embarrassment and keep going. They will gain a private pride that does not need to be advertised. They will become the outliers you think are lucky. They will be you if you choose it. Act accordingly. Stop asking your old self for permission. Begin treating your identity like a model that serves you, not a master you serve. If you are ready to join the minority who live that way, pay attention to the next choices you make when a label and a future are in conflict. Choose the future. Do it quietly. Let the model update. When you can do that without apology, you will have crossed into the group this message was meant for. The rest can keep their story. You will keep your life.